I did shower, so. Oh,
Oh no. Well, we are live. We're just Kathy kind of bowed out a little bit, but that's okay.
I think she was having a little bit of an audio problem. She's coming right
it's,
back.
it's all good. She's right back.
What's that?
You're back.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the computer. All of a sudden, the Wi-Fi is starting to act weird. So, are we online? Like, are we okay?
We're good. We're good.
Okay, good. All right. Yeah. So, Chris, thank you so much for being here. I'm just gonna introduce myself. My name is Cathryn Rogers. I am a psychic medium. I was a paranormal investigator for several years here in Edmonton, Alberta. And Lynda, maybe just introduce yourself as well, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. I'm a paranormal investigator. I've been one for 44 years. I'm here in the lovely province of Ontario, Canada, founder and director of the Georgina Paranormal Society, and so happy to be here.
And Chris, thank you so much. Is self again? No.
You're having a little bit of a problem there, Kathy.
Having some problems, Kathy.
Legacy.
Uh-oh. There we go. We're having some problems, some technical issues.
It's not Annabelle, folks.
No, it's not. No. No, we don't know what it is. Ghosts in the machine, Chris.
That's there.
Ghosts in the machine.
I'm familiar with those.
Yeah, me too. Pick me. Kathy, why don't you log out and come back on?
Yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. We're going to wait for Kathy because she's been dying to introduce you, Chris. So I'm not going to introduce you. We're going to wait for Kathy to come back on.
Kathy's a good friend, and it's always nice to see her again.
That's a good thing. Well, you know what? She has been so excited about this. Me too. Me too.
I'm easy to get a hold of. Just reach out.
That's good. That's a good thing because so many people these days are not that easy to get a hold of, for sure. Sometimes I'm not even easy to get a hold of.
I admit this week was a little hundreds of messages every single day, and it's been hard keeping up with them all.
For sure. And of course we know why, but that's another thing that we're hopefully going to touch on today. But let's see if Kathy comes back. Cross your fingers. Cross your fingers. Come on, Kathy. It's all good. But you're doing well, Chris?
I'm doing great. Live in Paraguay right now. Been traveling a lot the last few years. Well, 6 years.
Wow.
I think I've lived in 13 countries.
Oh my gosh, 13 countries.
And just in the last 6 years. I mean, I've lived in over 100 places. And honestly, everybody thinks I live this jet setter lifestyle. The truth is, I couldn't afford to live in the United States. I'm on a limited pension. It's so much cheaper to travel.
That's true. So many people tell me that as well. I mean, even in Canada, it is really not that, inexpensive to live in Canada either, depending, of course, where you are. I mean, I'm near like the Big Smoke, as they call it, Toronto. I'm about an hour north of Toronto. So it's not that cheap to live in
Right.
Toronto for sure. And people are moving up where I am on Lake Simcoe because the house prices are a little bit better. But again, everybody's moving here and things are starting to rise. So, but abroad, they do say that it's much cheaper to live abroad.
Depends on where you are. I mean, Europe is expensive, but there are places like Portugal, still very inexpensive, and a beautiful country. But here in South America, I've lived in Peru, Colombia, Brazil, Paraguay, up in Central America, in Costa Rica. Very, very inexpensive, and the people are absolutely wonderful. I could not recommend South America more.
I do have a good friend who purchased property, and I think is it Roatan?
I
I
don't know
think
where.
that's what they call it.
Okay.
And there apparently it's absolutely beautiful. It's paradise and not that expensive. So again, why not?
I have a 4 bedroom, 3 bathroom, fully furnished apartment for $500 American a month.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that sounds just right.
Yeah, that's all I can afford. I mean, that's a third of my pension. So, you know,
Absolutely. Now, why wouldn't you live there? I mean,
exactly.
I'm assuming that it's just like home now. You walk
It
to the
is.
grocery store, you get what you need, and I love it.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
wonderful.
That's amazing. So, you
Well,
know
why don't
what?
we get started? Because I have a feeling Kathy might be a while.
We're going to I was just going to say, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone and tell everybody who you are and where you're from and what you do?
All right. Well, I'm originally from the United States, obviously with this accent. Uh, and my name's Chris McKinnell. I'm the director of the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research. I began that with my grandmother, Lorraine Warren, right after the first Conjuring movie came out. Like you, I have 44 years experience in this field. Started when I was 16 years old with my grandfather on my first case. And I've been traveling the world and trying to understand what is behind the phenomena that we're dealing with and how different cultures deal with it and looking for better ways of dealing with it and understanding it.
Right. Right. I mean, it must have been pretty incredible to have, the Warrens as grandparents. I mean, that must have been pretty incredible. Quite a training ground for a paranormal investigator.
They, they were people. They were good people. They were my grandparents. So I didn't think of them I mean, yes, you could not escape what they were. Even growing up, before they were well known, I mean, I knew who they were. And as the 70s got started and people started to know who they were, it was very strange. Growing up in middle school, I was the kid with the weird grandparents who believed in ghosts. But by high school, when I went on my first case, I was considered like a rock star. It was like, yes, plenty of people, I'm sure, thought I was weird, but for those who were into it, and honestly, in high school, how many kids are not into it? Um, it was an interesting experience.
Absolutely. And was this something that you were interested in because you were interested in it, or was it something that evolved because of their interest in it?
Well, actually, I was more interested in understanding God, and I'd been forced to go to catechism because my family was Catholic.
Right.
Not my father, but my mother. And I didn't care for Catholicism. It wasn't for me. And so I started studying one religion after another, going to different churches, maybe taking 6 months or a year in that church, learning about it. And then it was Zen Buddhism and comparative theology and studying the origins of religions. But my grandfather and grandmother took me on a lecture tour when I was 14, and I watched my grandmother using her abilities for the first time. And that's when I was like, holy crap, my grandmother's got superpowers. I'd never seen anything like it. We were outside of a home. We're on one of these evening news magazines that they used to have, like PM Magazine or Inside Edition. And there was also a local reporter with us. They brought us to this house. We were not allowed to go in. The homeowners would not let us in. But the local reporter had been preparing a story about what had been taking place there. And my grandmother, just standing out front, starts describing all of the phenomena that took place there. As this poor reporter is, I'm 14, and he's sharing all of the information with me. Like, would you look at this? She's talking about this and this and this. The apparition with the bloody apron, with the big meat cleaver, and the smell of rotting flesh. And it was like, I was impressive. Very impressive.
Wow, amazing. When Kathy seems to be back again, we kind of started, we thought, you know,
No,
we're going with the momentum, we're going with the flow. Welcome back, Kathy.
it would be silly to not start. For
Yes,
sure.
for sure.
You know, we've had internet problems with people stealing the cables around
Oh.
here. So we don't. So sometimes our internet will go out intermittently.
Right.
We get all kinds of nonsense. So what were you guys talking about?
Just growing up with my grandparents.
Okay, all right, perfect. So, Lynda, I'm going to let you go into the next topic because I don't know where. I don't want to repeat anything. So wherever you guys left off.
But that's okay.
I was
Yeah.
14.
Yes, he was talking about growing up with his grandparents, and I mean, that must have been incredible when, you know, you were 14 and you went with them, and
And I
what
was
you
afraid of the dark.
experienced.
I was terrified of the dark. So, yeah, I mean, come on. You grew up with Ed and Lorraine Warren and try to not be afraid of the dark.
Right?
You know,
True.
I could feel things and I could hear things, and my room was always cold. It didn't matter if it was summer, it didn't matter what house I was in, and there would be whispers, and I was terrified. You know, it took time for me to understand what I was growing up with and who I was.
Wow.
So, Chris, I know that you say that because whenever we have a conversation, sometimes you'll say like, I'm not, you know, that you don't have abilities or that you're not sensitive and stuff like
Oh
that.
no, no,
But you
I
are, right? Like, you know,
no, what I said, I think, is I'm not comfortable with it. I
okay.
I used to read auras in my 20s,
Okay.
and people wanted that, so I would do it, but people don't really want to see their insecurities brought to light. They don't want you to
No.
talk about reality. They want to hear about how
Yeah.
wonderful they are, everything, and I'm not that guy. My filter isn't very good, especially in my 20s. So I would talk about all the trauma they had been through, and they would be in tears or angry at me. And it taught me very quickly, don't do that. You know, I use my abilities for my work, and that's all I use them for.
Right. Okay.
I probably should use them more in my day-to-day life, just making sure the people around me are good people. But I don't. I really don't. I think for me, it's an invasion of privacy.
Good
You mean
point.
tapping into other people, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I understand that because I do get a lot of people that will say, you know, oh, should I feel safe around you, or are you gonna, you know, start dissecting me? And I'm like, I don't do that. If there's something that somebody needs to know, spirit is going to be very clear about it, and you know, spirit is cutting in. It's like, you know, having the operator come in, call, you know, cut in if you're on a call and go, hey, you got to tell this person or warn this person or give this message immediately to this person. But otherwise, it's not my business to
Yeah.
sit there and try to decipher anybody, right?
I'm lucky. I shut myself down so completely in my 20s that I have to turn it on. I mean, I can,
Okay.
and I'm
Yeah.
pretty. I amaze myself. I honestly do. I don't believe in psychic abilities without evidence ever. If I don't get validation, then I don't believe it, and I never allow a psychic to run an investigation. They come in, they give their impressions to themselves, they write
That's
down everything, The team does their work, and then you compare notes. So there's no research bias. But yeah, I'm a skeptic. I've seen everything. I've felt everything. I've been thrown across the room. I've been levitated over stairs. I've had, so many things happen over the years. And I know the phenomenon is real. I just don't believe in the superstitious explanations behind them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely understand what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do too. I do too. Well, and I mean, everybody who's tuning in is probably asking the same questions because of what's been going on in, our paranormal world, our paranormal field. I mean, how do you feel about everything? Your phone must be blowing up, your your messages must be really something, Chris.
Yeah, as I said, I've been getting hundreds of messages every single day after what happened. Uh, for those who may not know what we're talking about Annabelle being on tour. Look, I cannot speak to what happened with the researcher. I don't know. But I warned people 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago, about the dangers of having the doll on tour, that there were not proper precautions being taken. Did the doll have anything to do with this recent death? I have no idea, and it wouldn't be my place to comment on that. There are people who are truly grieving, and of course they're grieving. Uh, but I wish the doll wasn't going to continue on tour. I know it's not something my grandparents
Right.
want. Certainly, my grandmother is unhappy about it. She's made that abundantly clear. She visits not just myself, but many people. My grandmother is a very, very active soul. Um, and there hasn't been one person that's come out saying, no, no, Lorraine came to me and said she wants this on tour. Not one. It's the same message again and again.
Yeah.
So I wish my family would learn from this, but they're not. They're, I don't know what to think of that.
Has this been the first time, or is this the first time that she's been on tour ever?
My grandmother used to open her home to people like 15 years ago.
Right.
And
I
then there were,
remember that. I remember that. Like, I remember that was, we would hear about that and people that had gone on, the tour.
yeah. And they'd come in, they'd meet my grandmother. Tony would talk, and then he would take them down to the museum. My grandmother wouldn't go, at least not that I'm aware of. She was old, that wasn't something she was capable of. But it was the way they were supporting her and making sure she had an income because there was no money.
Right.
And after they changed the zoning laws, my grandmother reluctantly allowed Tony to take it to an Italian restaurant 2 or 3 times a year, which was only a mile from the house. I wasn't crazy about the idea. My grandmother was already suffering from Alzheimer's. I think her judgment was impaired, and Tony just has taken it way too far. He doesn't understand what he's dealing with. He never worked on a case. If he has, it's been very recently. In the decades I've known him, he's never worked on one case. Um, he learned from listening to my grandparents during interviews. I don't even know if he believes in the paranormal. If he did, I can't imagine how he could be doing what he's doing.
Right. Right.
So, yeah, I don't know what to say about that.
Tell us a little bit about growing up with Annabelle. What was that like? Like, did you have any experiences with her? Did you, how did you, I guess, okay, so I'm one of those people, I like the beginning of the story. You know?
Yes.
Right? I want to know the evolution of things and how things evolved, even if it's on like especially on a personal level. So I would imagine because, Annabelle has been around obviously for a while before even you were born. And
No, no,
so,
no.
oh no, oh, it was after you were born. Is that
Yeah, no.
correct?
Annabelle came home when I was somewhere around 5 years old.
Oh, okay. Okay. See, I didn't know that. So that's interesting. So, yeah, tell us like how it was for you.
I, you know, First off, the Annabelle movies. Everybody should just ignore those. There's no truth. There is not one smidgen of truth to any of those films. The Conjuring movies are extraordinarily loosely based on true cases, but none of the details are correct.
Right.
It's ridiculous. My
The
grandparents were not
sensationalism.
superheroes. They were good people who would drop anything to help someone, but they were just people. Granted, my grandmother had a little something extra going on, um, but she was also the sweetest angel you'll ever hope to meet. You know. Um, as for Annabelle, I was the one that was locked in the museum when I was like 3 or 4 years old,
Oh my.
and that was why I was so afraid of the dark, I think. Um, I was only locked in there for a moment. My grandfather heard me screaming and came running and rescued me, but the damage was done.
I would have screamed too,
Oh
actually.
yeah,
Just, just
and for the first few years, my grandparents had no idea how to contain the energies contained in this doll. They had it sitting on a rocking chair. My cousin just told me a story. Oh my God, I couldn't believe this. The Moran family, that's my grandmother's side of the family, would come on Christmas Eve every year for the Moran family reunion. And when they were kids, Annabelle would be sitting in the rocking chair, and my grandfather would say, "No, no, don't go play with that doll. It's cursed." My aunt heard that. She grabbed the kids, and they were out of there immediately. Like, what are you doing leaving a doll out like that? So it took them time to learn how to lock down those energies. But I mean, look at that doll in the photos. There's a world famous sign right on it. Positively do not open.
Yeah.
And that's what was supposed to be the case. It's a we call it a museum and I wish we didn't. It's a prison. It's there to contain those things and protect people from the public. I mean, protect the public from those energies, excuse me. It Yes, people could get in there by special invitation, but that was all it ever was. And we were given specific instructions: do not touch anything. When I was growing up, Annabelle, I don't remember Annabelle ever being in a chair. Annabelle was always in the box when I was there.
Okay.
I mean, that's my first memory of
You mean
Annabelle.
a chair outside of the box? Is that what you mean?
For years, yeah, for until like 76, maybe 75, Annabelle was just sitting in a rocking chair
Oh
in
my
the
goodness.
basement. Yeah, I
Oh my
know.
goodness. Okay.
Uh, but they learned. That's just the thing. People think that my grandparents, they read their books and everything, and oh, they're experts. No, you're seeing a snapshot in time, and
Yeah.
the old interviews and stuff. Take a break, folks. Understand this is a field of research, and they were still learning, and they're always learning and adapting and growing. Just like I've continued from their work. I've taken it somewhere different than they could have imagined. My grandmother's overjoyed with the direction this is going, but they were looking at things through a Catholic lens. That's how they learned. They still work with other religions all the time, every religion imaginable, but for them, their understanding came through their faith. I've learned that your faith can be a wonderful protection and a tool in dealing with the paranormal, but it should not be the lens through which you examine the paranormal. Uh, I've only ever had not bad, one experience with Annabelle. I've never touched Annabelle. I'm not stupid. Annabelle is like a cobra. If your energy interacts with its energy, you're going to get bit. That's the reality. It's not capable of causing tornadoes and fires and everything else unless it's had, well, maybe I don't think it could ever cause a tornado, but unless it's had some interaction with somebody somewhere in that location, it has no connection to it. It has no way of influencing that place. It needs that attachment to interact.
Right.
So one time I was in there with a woman who was close to me at the time, and she wanted photos of herself at my grandfather's desk and everything. My grandmother was like, "Oh yeah, go ahead, go on down." We took pictures. We had been to, oh, what's the name of that cemetery where the white lady is? I can't remember. Union Cemetery. It's a
Okay.
place that my grandfather was fascinated by. And we had been there first, took lots of photos. Then we went into the museum, took lots of photos, pictures of her with all the different artifacts, the including Annabelle. And then we went to visit my grandfather's grave and took more photos. Now the photos at Union Cemetery before and the photos at my grandfather's gravesite, no problem. And we were looking at the ones in the museum in the car on our way home. But the next morning when we woke up, every photo from the museum was gone. Just poof.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Everything
Fascinating.
else before and after, still there, but not the ones in the museum.
Fascinating.
That's
Wow.
the only experience I had.
Really?
Huh. That
That's
is interesting, actually. That's, yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
that's
We
crazy
actually
interesting.
had that happen once in a very haunted location as well, which I find really fascinating because you literally just made me remember this. And we were at, funny enough, a museum, but it wasn't like a haunted museum. It was just the museum was haunted, right? But
Hmm.
we had all kinds of interesting things that happened throughout the night. Even a lady screaming from, like, this is an isolated building, and with no external uh, stuff around us, I guess.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we heard this lady just screaming, and the whole bit. Like, we had some crazy stuff. We went to go look at the footage later. Everything was white static, everything, and none of our cameras were connected with each other, so it was all individual. Like, it wasn't from one DVR system or anything like that. It was each individual camera. There was nothing on them. It was really interesting.
Well, energy manipulation is the simplest thing a spirit can do. Now,
Yeah.
they're energy. Uh, and I find it interesting because I've visited many museums in my life, and many of them, of course, have energies and are haunted because the objects in there had great meaning to somebody. Uh, I was in one in Mexico with the team there that I was on a lecture tour there. And this was a private museum. The downstairs, it still looked like the place where the woman had lived. The upstairs was more of the museum stuff. And after asking permission of the spirit to be allowed to come in, I was using my hands to feel around the wall because there were bookcases full of stuff. And I just wondered, is there anything here? And I could feel energy right there, but nothing in particular stood out, not one object. And I mentioned that, and I said, well, that actually makes sense. We were talking about how this woman had murdered a child and then taken her own life in remorse. And when we talked about that in a television interview, the wallpaper peeled off at that very moment. And that's what I was feeling, the wallpaper. So we went into the next room where the bed was, and I asked permission to sit there. And I immediately picked up on the fact that, yes, she blamed herself for the child's death, but it was through negligence. She hadn't hurt the child at all. And then she took her own life because she felt such overwhelming guilt. And in Mexico, they used to be very different. They would punish a dead body. They would either hang it, or in this case, they walled it up into the actual wall of the house. But
Oh,
upstairs, I
wow.
was overwhelmed by energies that were there until there was this one sword that had belonged to a hero of the Mexican Revolution. And they wanted me to touch it. And I thought, ugh, I'm already overwhelmed by the energies in this place. I had to keep stepping out onto the roof terrace because it was just too much. But I said, okay. And I thought, I'm going to pick up on blood and violence and all sorts of stuff. No. As soon as I picked that up, I was filled with nobility and strength. And I was like, wow, do you mind if I hold this while I'm here? And they said, no, you go right ahead. For the rest of that visit, I was completely protected. I mean,
That's
obviously not by a sword itself. I
Yeah.
didn't need the sword, but it was amazing that the man who had that, his energy had imprinted so much onto that it was a source of strength.
that's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Well, now when you talk about energy, it fascinates me because, as a kid, I remember watching things on television with, Ed and Lorraine Warren and reading things that they had done and places that they had gone to. And I think that was when I was very young, that was the first time that I'd really thought about the fact that there could be an energy that could possibly still be there, that could possibly attach itself to you. Anything about energy. I think the Warrens were, the first ones that really brought that attention to energy. I mean, that must have been fascinating for you growing up in that kind of atmosphere and learning about, the implications of all of that.
It was. And we've taken it in a new direction. Back in 1972, the BBC had a docudrama called The Stone Tape Theory. It was
Yes.
just a drama. And the writer came up with this idea that psychic energy can imprint on stone and carry vibrations forward. But it was just a literary device or dramatic device. I'm learning, though, that psychics may be more sensitive to EMF than other people are, and that energy is what we're picking up on. That we rewire
Yeah.
our brain through neuroplasticity, especially when we're young, to channel that energy in a way that we can understand it. If we practice that, like for instance, dream journaling or scrying or divining rods or whatever you use, you're training your brain to give you information in that way. But I also believe, because each of us generates EMF, electromagnetic energy, when our hearts are pumping very, very hard, when we are in mortal terror or full of hatred or anger or whatever, we're pumping out a lot more energy than normal. Now, granted, it's still not tremendous, but if you're on a battlefield such as Gettysburg, I believe that energy, and I've been doing a lot of research in quantum physics for decades on this, it may warp space and leave a tether through time space. So when we go back to a place like, for instance, the Tower of London, we are constantly renewing that tether through time with our remembrance and our attention to it. Without that tether will fade away, which is why we don't see cavemen ghosts or things of that nature, because we aren't aware of it to begin with. We don't have that conscious energy that's keeping it renewed through time.
Right.
This is part of the book I'm writing, The Warren Legacy, and we're looking at the fabric of reality, consciousness, and what the paranormal says about these things, and what we can learn from. I, I see the paranormal as something very, very powerful and empowering, hopeful. Yes, it can be deadly, but the paranormal is like electricity. It can electrocute you, or it can light up the world.
Right. Right. Oh, I love that. That's actually really good. Well, when you're talking about that whole thing about the stone tape theory, um, it's interesting because you're probably really familiar with the work of John Sable, and when he talks about, oh, he's pretty cool. I think it's Sabol, and he talks about ghost excavation and about the ability to sort of go back and through the layers of energy in a particular location. So we're talking about either Gettysburg or maybe, at the Tower of London, and being able to access all of that energy and excavate that energy. That is so incredible because when you think about it, there are layers of energy. And if you're a psychic medium like Kathy, you might be able to access that. And you too,
100%. Yeah.
Chris, right? You can access kind of the layers because there are truly layers of it. It's not just one form of energy. There is a lot going on there.
Oh yeah, and my grandmother used to, just for an example, the aura is the field of energy in a person's body. It's made up of different colors. But my grandmother would say, that's only the table of contents. You have to go beyond that and read the book.
Yeah. There's a lot of times if I'm doing a reading, whether it's location based or human based, where there's so many things that are affecting what is happening, whether it's on a paranormal level or whether it's on a personal level. Somebody will say, is this going to happen or whatever. Well, I'm not a prediction type of person. I'm not going to sit there and tell you what's going to happen in 20 years. That's not my thing. You know what I mean? But I
Yeah.
can tell you the layers of energy that are coming through that may help create the next step within that level of what it is that you're asking.
Yeah, free will is a very powerful part of the fabric of reality. And we do have self determination. You can pick up on threads of the future. All time, according to quantum physics, all time is now. And it does,
Absolutely.
on the quantum level, it doesn't matter if time is moving forward or backward, it is the same to quantum physics. Um, I believe you can tap into that. But
Yeah.
I also believe that knowing can change it.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. And I'm gonna just talk on that for a second, just really quick. And I 100% agree. And that, like, a lot of people will ask when I'm doing readings, because 99% of the readings that I do, or let's say 90%, they end up being, is he gonna call? What's how all of this nonsense, right? And I mean, it is what it is because people are invested in their romantic life or what's going on, in their relationships, whether on a love level or, a friendship or interactive in some way. But the thing is that, people will ask for timelines. Well, when is this going to happen? But the problem is like, yes, I might hear a timeline and usually my timelines are fairly exact. However, if somebody's sitting there going, okay, August 15th, this is going to happen,
Yeah.
it's probably not going to happen. And, because they're focused in, and then they're creating, um, just on the manifestation level, they're creating their own reasons for it not happening.
Mhm.
Because they're gonna, oh well, she was wrong, or this, oh, I can't see that happening, or he must be busy, he must be doing this, she must be doing, like, they're creating their own um energy to make it not be created.
Or on
I
the
guess
flip side, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You
well,
lay down,
that's a good way
they
to say
make
it.
sure it happens.
100%. Yeah, absolutely, right? And a lot of times, it's like if you just relax and stay present and stay in an energy of allowing, people will see the changes happen so much faster that they're wanting to create or
Yeah.
manifest, right?
It's one how I say prayer is great, but you have to put your faith into action. If you don't meet it halfway, then the future isn't going to happen the way you want it to. You have to make it happen that way.
It's true.
Right. It's like, well, you're probably not going to meet your soulmate sitting on your couch, like pouting and
Exactly.
drinking a beer. you know, and, you know, on sitting there on Netflix, pouting, drinking beer, and being like,
Go out to the bar and have a beer.
right, or just get out of the house, or go, be in a better mindset, or whatever it is, right? So
That's what my grandmother taught me.
yeah,
Like attract like. You put out positive energy, you will attract positive into your life. I've seen it in my personal life. I've seen it, thousands of times as a therapist and just in life in general. Your outlook is everything, and in a home
absolutely.
as well. If your home is cluttered, if it's messy, if it's miserable, clean it out. Get rid of the clutter. If you're fighting, work on that. Get help with that. If watch comedies that make you laugh out loud. Listen to music that makes you want to sing and dance. My grandmother said that's half the battle right there. You do that, you've taken care of half the problem in the home.
A lot of
It's a
people
holistic
don't
approach.
remember the fact that a home is only four walls. No matter how big your home is, it's four walls. So if you're bringing negative energy into that home, and this is, I like to relate it to mom and dad fighting in the bedroom. Usually those are the places that, or those are the couples that end up in some sort of divorce, simply because of the fact that you are fighting in the room that you're supposed to have. You're supposed to be intimate with your partner. You're supposed to be in a loving place with your partner. You're supposed to be, sharing your soul with this partner, your heart, your love, all of this. And if you're sitting there squabbling and you keep the door shut, what is building in that room is just volcanic, really, right? Of a more negative nature. But even when we've done investigations, now, people that can handle the paranormal, or we know about it, or we have ideas how the energy works, and however you want to phrase that, I'm fine talking about the paranormal in my home. There are some things, however, that if somebody was to, if somebody's trying to talk to me about something, I'll be like, I'm going outside. Just give me a second.
Yeah,
I'm going to go on a walk. I'm taking this out of my home because this is energy I don't want in my home.
right.
It's only four walls, no matter how big your home is. And so you go for a walk, you take it outside. The earth can take it. The earth transmutes it into beauty. It can
Mhm.
transmute it, and you don't need it in your house. And I used to say that to clients all the time: get it out of your house. Talk about it out of the house. Like, you don't
Yeah.
need to be in the home and discussing it.
Well, that's another thing. Like, okay, so Chris, your grandparents, and from your perspective too, when they worked on particular cases,
Mm.
um, you know, they obviously brought some of that energy home with them, or how did they deal with that?
Oh, they got attacked. They
I
got attacked several times. So did I. But we've learned how to deal with that and to mostly stop it. I did want to point out one quick thing though on the same thread with Kathy. Folks, if you've got a haunting in your home, you're not supposed to investigate it yourself, because then you are putting all your energy into manifesting it and making it far, far worse. You let someone else do the investigation. If you're going to put up Ring cameras, know that those digital cameras suck. And you are going to get a lot of false positives. And you shouldn't be the one reviewing the cameras. That's not for you. You're going to, again, be focusing all your energy into making things manifest. And now you're trapped with whatever it is that you've manifested. Please don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, my grandparents were horribly attacked. I have been so many times I've lost count, but recently, not very much. I mean, I got to the point where I would say when something started up, I'd say, "Really, you're doing it again? You know that hasn't worked the last dozen times. Why are you using the same tactics?" It's like they're showing that these things are reactive, not active. They're not actually intelligent. Human spirits absolutely are intelligent, but inhuman spirits are reactive. They are activated by our energy, our output, or the energy of others. And I have not seen the wisdom of the ages from these things. Um,
Absolutely.
And when you're dealing with a human spirit, which is the only thing that ever comes to my home now, I say, look, I'm coming to your house tomorrow. That's when I'll talk to you. Not here, not in my home. You're not allowed. And if you give your personal boundaries, your spiritual boundaries to someone, they normally respect them unless they're desperate or mentally off balance, or they were a jackass in life.
Right. Well, that's true too. Well, and with the Warrens, I know where I remember as a kid thinking people went to them when nothing else can work, when they were desperate, when they needed, the big guns to come and handle something. And you have to handle it in their case, I think, in a very strong place of faith, because growing up Roman Catholic like me, I was always fascinated with the Warrens because they were very, very Catholic, and they handled it
Mhm.
with that, sort of, yeah, you understand where I'm going with
Yeah,
this.
no, I was laughing because my grandfather, probably the only times he was ever in a Catholic church was for a baptism, a funeral, or a wedding. The man was less Catholic. My,
Right.
my grandmother, on the other hand, had a Catholic priest living with her not the last year and a half of life I was there, but before me, there was a priest living there saying daily mass for her. Uh, you know, the thing is, in my trip, I have worked with everybody from indigenous shaman in the jungles of Colombia to the Dalai Lama, and it doesn't matter what your religion is. What matters is your faith and your intention to connect with God. As long as you're practicing your faith with empathy and compassion for others, you're on the right path. And there's a Hindu proverb that I live by. There are many paths up the mountain. It's only the fool running around the bottom saying you're going the wrong way that never gets any closer to the top.
Oh,
Faith is your armor. Faith is your sword. But it doesn't matter what that faith is. What matters is
absolutely.
your intention, and using ritual is important. It focuses your faith and your intention.
For sure. But you have to admire both of them for taking on all of these cases that were so difficult that a lot of people just ran away from, and they embraced them.
Yeah. And we still see that today. It's so frustrating to me to get a call from some poor, terrified family who says, we had a team in here. They said I have a demon and they couldn't
Oh,
help me. And then they run. I was like, how dare you?
Yeah.
Go into a
yeah.
home, stir up terror like that.
Yeah.
It's unbelievably irresponsible. I won't even allow people to use the term demon because it's a culturally loaded, fear-based term that really doesn't mean anything. These things can manifest all over the world in different ways.
Hmm.
So calling it a demon for one person is totally different for a different person. It isn't a useful term.
Wow. So some of the things that were or are to this day in the museum, a lot of people out there classify them as demonic. What do
Yeah.
you say to those people?
I say there are tremendous energies attached to these dolls and other objects, but their energy, it's quantum physics. We may not understand it, but there are a lot of things we don't understand. If you're going to investigate the paranormal, you have to be comfortable with your ignorance. You have to be comfortable with the unknown. Human beings are storytellers. We want to label everything because it gives us comfort, even if that label is the devil. That's better than the unknown. The unknown you can't fight against. The devil, you have rules and you have ways of dealing with it. So I am somebody who's learned from my grandparents to be comfortable with not knowing.
like
The
that.
other thing too, going back to the layers, interesting enough, like as you were talking, I was like, so many of these objects have so many layers to them as well. It wasn't like one incident or one, and for some of them, I'm sure, yes, but it almost feels like within them, it was just layers and then stories on top of that, which has its own energy, right? And brings about, a whole
Yep.
different category of things. And so, it's just layer upon layer, right? Whether it's
Annabelle,
Annabelle or something else, it's layers.
no, I was just saying, Annabelle's a fantastic example of that.
Yeah.
It started out as one thing, but with millions and millions of people feeding energy into that,
Yeah.
and their focused fear and some weirdly love, lots of cases actually, uh, it is manifesting in totally new ways, unpredictable ways. And that is something that concerns me a lot.
Can I just ask? I don't know if you guys were talking about this when I was having my internet burp, but when it comes to Annabelle, do you have any personal theories in regards to the who, what, where, when, whatever? You know what I mean? Like what has created her? I guess.
Yes, absolutely. It's not a team.
And I call it a her, but I mean, I I'm just going with the external of the doll, I guess is the best
Yeah.
way to say it.
I'm going to say something that's very controversial, and I'm not
That's what we're here for, Chris.
trying to offend anybody's beliefs or anything of the sort.
Mhm.
And my respect for my grandparents couldn't be greater,
Yeah,
but they didn't have anybody to mentor them. I had them, you know. I had the benefit of their knowledge, as well as watching them adapt and change over time. Annabelle, I think, started out as something called a tulpa, which is a thought form. It is a spirit. Don't get me wrong. People seem to not understand what I'm saying here. I'm not saying it's a figment of somebody's imagination at all.
right.
It has energy. It has a personality,
Yeah,
but it was created by human energy.
right.
It started with two nurses, one of whom her name was Debbie. Her mother bought her the doll at a secondhand shop, a thrift store. It's a Knickerbocker Raggedy Ann doll, and they fell in love with it. It was special to them. They were nurses in training, Hartford Hospital. They were young, and they loved this doll. They sat it with them at the table. They slept with it. They talked to it. And one day, the doll's arms levitated up onto the table, and they thought, "Oh, there must be a spirit in the doll. Let's have a séance." So they contacted somebody that they believed to be a medium, who, in a series of seances, came up with the idea that this Raggedy Ann doll was actually a little girl named Annabelle who had died in front of the house and was just looking for somebody to love her. They gave it a story. Now, with that story, the girls fleshed it out even further. They bought it a bracelet that's still on it to this day. They showered it with love. They talked to it constantly as though it was a little girl.
Right.
And it started to act like a little girl. It would, when they would go to work and come home, the doll wouldn't be where they had left it. It was playing hide and seek. It would leave messages on parchment paper with crayon. They didn't have parchment paper or crayon, saying things like, "Want to play? Miss me?" But
Yeah.
the girls started to get creeped out. They felt like they were constantly being watched, and their energy started to change. And what they were giving it was fear. And that's when the doll's messages started to turn a little darker. Things like, "Help me." Because the doll was acting like a child who was
Yeah.
being rejected.
Right.
One afternoon, the boyfriend in the house was visiting the house. It was a Sunday afternoon. He was sleeping on the couch. He wakes up. He had never liked this doll, never wanted it in the house, wanted to get rid of it. And he said, I just had a dream that Annabelle crawled up on top of me and was choking me to death. He got up, he walked across the room to where Annabelle was sitting in a chair, picked it up, threw it across the room, and said, "You're a stupid doll, you couldn't hurt anybody." As soon as he said that, the room started pounding within the walls. The chair the doll had been sitting in rocketed across the room, and he was clawed across the chest.
Mm-hmm.
They immediately contacted the Lutheran Church in Hartford. They got a hold of I think his name was Father Tybalt. No, that's wrong. It begins with a T. I'm sorry, I can't remember. He knew my grandparents. This was before my grandparents were famous. And my grandparents immediately agreed to go in and check it out. Now, my grandfather prejudged the case before he even got there. He said, "There's no way this is going to be the ghost of a child, because God would not allow a child to possess a doll." Turns out that's not actually true. We've got cases where children have attached to dolls as a vehicle for staying close to their families. But in this case, my grandfather believed that. Now, my grandmother, faced with all that negative energy that has now been stored in the doll, interpreted that as a demon.
Okay.
You have to understand, my grandmother and grandfather didn't even believe in demons for the first 6 years they were investigating. It's just they were confronted with phenomena that they could not explain, and they fell back on their Catholic roots as an explanation.
Right.
When they brought it home, there were no, major problems, nothing like that. But there were times where Annabelle did attack people. Father Bill Charbonneau was a friend of ours, mine as well. One of these hip 1970s long-haired hippie priests. No, not hippie, but long-haired priest. And just the sweetest man in the world. I'd go to his midnight mass at Christmas Eve every year with my grandmother, never with my grandfather. Um, but he had brought his new car over to see my grandparents. And afterward, he said, "Ed, I hear you've got a doll that attacks people." He says, "Yes, Father, it's downstairs. Would you like to see it?" So they went down, and Father Bill walks up to it, picks it up, and says, "God is stronger than the..." And he throws it across the room, just like the boyfriend did. And
Wow.
my grandfather looked at him, "Yes, Father, God is stronger than the devil, but no man is." On his way home, I think he was on Route 8 in Connecticut, Father Bill said this to me. There was a bright light that came out of the sky, and in the halo of the light, just before he veered off the road into the median, he swore he saw Annabelle in the light. The car was ripped in half, his leg was broken, and that's one of the times that it was pretty bad. Now, there's another story out there about a young man taunting Annabelle on a motorcycle. That never happened.
Okay.
That's bull. My grandfather, Father Bill, my belief is Father Bill told my grandfather, "Please stop telling people about me," you know. And my grandfather still wanted to warn the public, so he changed it to this story about the young man on the motorcycle. He embellished, but he was trying to get a point across.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think of Annabelle now as an egregore, something a little bit different than a tulpa. A tulpa is created by the energy of people that are focused. An egregore is something that's created by the mass public, and it takes on a life of its own. Slender Man is another good
Right.
example of
Right. Yeah.
created online. It did not exist. Or the Hat Man, or the Phantom Hitchhiker phenomena, or the Black-Eyed Children. We go through these eras of manifestations. Even to some extent, I believe some of the sightings of the Greys, the aliens in the 80s and the early 90s, I think probably egregores. Because we were so focused on those things, we were making them manifest around us.
Right. Yeah.
You know? But have
And
you
isn't
noticed
it
how we
interesting
don't?
though how it kind of dissipates once like you don't hear about encounters with Slender Man anymore.
Right.
or if you do, it is extremely rare or made up at that point.
Yeah.
Or
We focus on something new, but there
yeah,
are some things that continue, like our cryptids around the world. But there
yes,
are tens of thousands of cryptids. Peru alone has about 1,000,
yeah.
and I don't believe for a second that these things all exist, but I do believe that they can manifest. We can give our perception can create their reality. We can have them take on that personality, and they will act the way we expect them to. I had a case in Costa Rica with, I think it was called La Mona. It, this is a monkey-like creature, stands about 3 feet tall. It's supposed to be a witch who can turn into this monkey-like creature. And there were three of them up in this former coffee plantation high up in the mountains of Aurelia, Costa Rica. Now, there are no monkeys at that elevation. They just don't exist. There were none in any part of Aurelia. But one night, the three women came home, and there were a lot of amazing things that happened in this house. But in this particular one, there were three of these creatures in the tree, and they were cackling and laughing and basically taunting these three women. And then 3 days later, that tree fell over dead, the largest tree in the yard. I have no explanation really for that one. Another time, the boyfriend of the mother of the three women came to visit, and he saw this wavy figure, like the figure Predator when it's invisible.
Right.
It had a it had a goose under each arm because they were raising geese and ducks and chickens, and it was running away from him. And the man called out, "Hey, what are you doing?" And it dropped one of the geese, and it escaped with the other one. A bit later, they woke up one morning, and all 60 of the ducks, geese, etc., were laid out in a line, all dead. No blood, nothing, just all dead.
Wow.
What?
Yeah. There were other experiences in that house too, plenty. There was black magic involved. To me, I find the idea of magic intellectually insulting. I accept it. I know it's real. I've been attacked by it. I've had to use rituals to protect myself and cleanse myself. But I have to think of it as energy, directed energy. But it is real, and it can be deadly.
Wow.
When we were talking about cryptids, so like you were saying, across the world, there's cryptids. There's so many just in Peru alone. We look at Ireland. We look at Canada. We've definitely got ours here. All of that, but it's interesting. Let's just, if we look at like Bigfoot, that's just as just as an example, right? We've got Bigfoot, we got the Yeti, we've got Sasquatch. Each has its own name,
Yeah,
right?
many of them
Right.
all over the world.
Same general idea, just going under a different maybe region or name. And do you feel like that is fairly universal with most cryptids? Like, do you feel like,
Not
because I
really.
have seen some that are very unique maybe to that um country or that region. Yeah.
Right.
I was
There are
just wondering, because we were
entities
talking
all over
about
the world.
creating,
They're
like,
yeah. Sorry, I'm
no,
stepping
no,
on you.
no, that's okay. Yeah.
There are duendes all over the world. Elf-like creatures,
Yeah.
gnome-like creatures
Yeah.
that manifest in one form or another, very similar to one another, all over the world. And the
Yeah.
same thing with your Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Yowie, Yeti. To me, that one may actually be a racial memory or a genetic memory of
Okay.
pre-human ancestors.
Yeah.
Again, when we are faced with the unknown, we have to give it a face. Having said that, my grandmother did report having telepathic communication with a Sasquatch I think it was in Appalachia. This one had supposedly been wounded and had approached children, reached out to children, terrifying them. And my grandmother was able to communicate with it and find out that it was innocently trying to reach out to them. It was harmless, it was peaceful, it had just been hurt, and it was looking for help. Now, my grandmother also communicated with Marilyn Monroe at her gravesite and said that it was an accidental OD, that there was no murder involved or anything of that sort. Um, my grandmother was great, but she wasn't always perfect either.
Right.
We were in the exorcism of Maurice Theriault. I was there protecting the bishop, and my grandfather and grandmother were off to the side. They weren't participating at that point in their careers. And my grandfather was complaining he didn't feel well. And my grandmother looked right at him, and she suggested he eat a banana because she thought he was low on potassium. He was having a heart attack.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow.
I think she was much better when her emotions were not involved, like any psychic. You know, when
Of
they
course.
don't know. So I would believe the Sasquatch story first. I'm not so sure about Marilyn Monroe. I don't know what her feelings were about Marilyn Monroe.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, I mean, for myself too, it's hard to read yourself. It's hard to read your own environment. It's hard to, we're not, we're very biased when it comes to that. And we want to, and we always want to believe the best. And we want to, I'm quite happy, like, pretending clouds and puppy dogs and kitties and all of this other stuff. Like I'm really good with that, but sometimes it's hard to, expand, beyond ourselves in that extent. Now, you take a reading for somebody else, boom, you're good. Like, because it's not, I don't have to, I guess, deal with it. Although I do try to put myself into their place in regards to, especially if it comes down to how do we, what is the fix of this, or is there a fix to this? Because and I mean, we've had many talks about my own experiences, and I like to have a fix. I don't want to be in a
Right.
place where I'm not having some sort of fix, right? Like, or so I get it. We've got some questions, if you're okay with answering some of them. So somebody was Sparky's Paranormal is asking, so many spirits and fae are just doing their own thing and don't like people. Some do attach, like Annabelle, for safety and to survive. Should we not look how things react to us?
Oh, absolutely. You should judge every haunting by the consequences. More often than not, you're not dealing with anything harmful or deadly.
Yeah.
You may be dealing with something a little pissed off or desperate or even afraid itself. But your fear is going to turn what might be a beautiful visitation into something terrifying for you. So even if, like, a cup flies across the room and smashes against the wall, don't immediately assume you're dealing with something terrible.
Right.
That could be somebody desperate to get your attention for some good reason, and they don't have fine motor control. How they're able to constantly remove your keys for 3 hours and then put them back, I've never been able to figure out, but most of the time, it's an explosion of energy.
Yeah. Or also, too, sometimes they're trying to distract you from something that could save you or help you or protect you in another way.
Yeah. Yep.
You
I
know?
absolutely agree with that. I
Yeah.
mean, I had my glasses go missing. I can't see me or you or anything.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to go on a case. And, yeah, there's a part of me that could say, oh,
Yeah.
they want me to go on a case there, it was bad. But no, it wasn't all that bad, really. I think it was just somebody was there protecting me and making sure I didn't go at that moment. I
Right.
had to wait.
Yeah.
And then my glasses were back and I went.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I've had that happen many times where you find out after there's been an accident or maybe or even to that degree, maybe somebody else needed your help, so you were distracted for a moment from another particular thing and you are sent somewhere else simply because of the fact that you needed to be in that particular. I had
Yeah.
that happen like during the just before the pandemic. It was so bizarre actually. I was supposed to go do something and I was just like, you know what? I don't feel like it. I actually, for whatever reason, I feel like I want to go to Walmart. Like I don't know what it was. Like it was so dumb. But I was gonna go across town and I had to pick up a part and all of this other stuff. But I was like, no, I think I want to go to Walmart, but I want to go like right now. I have to go right now. And so went over there, and as I was there, I was walking down the aisles and this lady came by with her baby. Like she had like a toddler, and the toddler was turning blue, couldn't breathe. And I just grabbed she was like just running around screaming. I just grabbed this baby and like at the back of it's right there, like that, called 911. And it turned out the baby was actually really sick. So it wasn't so much that it was choking, it was just really like it had a lot of congestion. And this was interesting enough right before the pandemic. So then I always think, well, maybe it had, the beginning of, right?
Mm.
Something, but yeah, called 911 and the whole bit. But for whatever reason, I needed to be there.
That's really weird because I've had an almost identical experience. Uh,
That
the
is,
day
I got
doing
chills. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you get chills. Yeah.
the
What
day I was
happened?
supposed to be at the haunting in Connecticut cleansing, because that was my case. I was the lead investigator.
Yeah.
I was there 9.5 weeks straight, except for one night. And the one day I should have been there for the actual house cleansing, I wasn't. Instead, I was in a grocery store, and all of a sudden I hear screaming, and I go running, and there's this woman with I guess maybe a 5, 6 year old girl who's choking to death, and everybody's standing around doing nothing. And I just grabbed her, did the Heimlich immediately, and out
Yeah.
pops a piece of candy. And I realized, well, I was in the right place at the right time. And I just walked away. I was like, no, you know, I,
Wow.
I was done.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah. Like it's just it's so wild. And a lot of people will be, and this is where put my words into like one category here. Hang on a second. So I'm trying to organize my words because I'm all over the place. But it's basically like a lot of people, we get anxiety about this or that, or worrying about the past. And it's so important if we can try to really stay present, because when we're present and we're listening to the things that are coming in toward us, like it's not even so much that we're listening, we're just in a place of like allowing, accepting, we hear things on a different level. And this is where we're sometimes directed or even redirected toward something, or we're just in a place where, a lot of people will say, it's like that energy of we're expecting a phone call, but if we go and do something else, all of a sudden that's when the phone call is going to happen because we're not paying attention to
Yeah.
such a present energy, you know? And I sometimes laugh with my clients because I'll say to them, "Go do something." They're like, "I don't know what to do." And I said, "I don't know. I play video games. Like I turn on Zelda." I'll sit there for like an hour. Like I don't care that I'm too old for this shit. Like I'm gonna play it because it's distracting, right? And it gets your mind. I'm not sitting there all day, but it brings me into a different state of balance
Right.
for me personally, right? Or I go for a walk or go do whatever, that makes you happy or brings a sense of balance to yourself. Walking is amazing. Walking is amazing. Um, there's another question here. Brenda asks, she says, this might be a silly question, but lends to your topic. Do you think Bigfoot is one of the cryptids that we created like Slenderman because of its popularity?
I no, oddly, I think that one might be real.
Yeah.
It's either a genetic memory or it actually exists. And I'm far more open minded to that being an actual creature
Yeah.
than
You know,
like this chupacabra. Uh,
Right.
yeah.
Great.
There was we had on a guest a few years ago. Um and he was a Sasquatch investigator, researcher, and he's indigenous, and he had stories from his grandparents where there was beautiful, commute or conversation and living and being able to, just be with these creatures. And
Hmm.
they were a part of their society. And we're talking, a few thousand years ago, but these are stories that have been passed up through time.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
I'm very.
I agree.
I
What's
agree.
that? Say that again. I'm so sorry. I
Hmm?
didn't hear what you said.
Oh, I just said I'm very open-minded to the whole idea of the Yeti, the Sasquatch. I remember seeing a skull cap when I was hiking the Himalayas. I was in a temple in the Himalayas, and this was supposed to be a skull cap of an actual Yeti that they had found.
Ooh,
Now, there were tests done on it. I'm very curious, uh, but people take it on faith.
yeah.
Absolutely. Just before we say goodbye for the day, which I just want to say, first of all, we so appreciate you being here. Are there any Would you give any advice to people? Let's say somebody has decided that they want to go see this doll on tour, or things that are similar. What would you say to this?
Don't,
Okay.
don't.
Very, very, very direct.
You
Yeah.
don't know what you're dealing with, and unfortunately, neither do the people who have got the doll on tour and the other objects. I grew up around them. I know what my grandfather taught me. He said, don't touch these things. You
Yeah.
do not want your energy interacting with them. And these people moving these objects are touching, they're interacting with them, and they're opening themselves up. And that is dangerous. And I have had people go to some of these events being pushed up against the glass. And I've seen the TikTok videos of people trying to communicate with Annabelle. And, they're standing next to it and talking to it. And they're like, what are you doing? No,
Yeah.
don't. Everything is for clicks and likes, for God's
I was
sake.
just going to say
Use
that.
some
Like
common
clicks and
sense.
likes aren't important. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree with you. Well, and people have been saying, yes, but there were all kinds of safeguards in place. And when you do all of this, there's all of these safeguards in place.
Well,
It's
what
like,
safeguards could there be though? Like that's the thing.
exactly.
Like unless you had like, I don't even know what kind of safeguards that you would,
They were using
put.
oven mitts doused in holy water and garden gloves doused in holy water to hold the doll. It's ludicrous. That the holy water is great
Yeah.
until you open yourself up to the energies. If you voluntarily give up your protection by touching the thing, then you've given up the protection of God. You've used your free will. And they don't, my family doesn't understand that.
Right. Right.
Do you think it's a matter of not understanding, or is it more about, like we just said, the clicks, the likes, the revenues, etc.?
Rev-
Like the revenue. Yeah. Like
well,
it's not so
Tony's
much that I don't
only fa-
understand, it's just a matter of like the revenues maybe.
well, Tony wants to be famous. He always did. When I started the foundation with my grandmother, he asked to see all the plans for it. It was supposed to be under NESPR. We were supposed to be the international national outreach to the world, but it was supposed to be under NESPR. As soon as I gave him the notes, he said, you should ask me what I want to do. This is my time. Don't do anything until I'm dead. I was like, Tony, you've never worked on a case. I've been doing this my entire life. I'm not going to stop helping people just because you want to be famous. And that was pretty much the last time I ever spoke to the man.
Wow. Wow. So there's so much more to everything than meets the eye, like everything else in life.
Ego is a major danger. Yeah. It's scary. I've seen people who were very good researchers start to become famous, and all of a sudden that's all they care about. It's why I've avoided it my whole life. I don't want to turn into I was going to say a word I probably shouldn't. I don't want to turn into a jackass. You know?
Totally. Yeah.
But if I want to help people, I have to be out here and I have to let people know we're here to help. The foundation is important. My grandmother is happy with what we're doing. She's visited so many of our members and told them that. And all of our work is confidential. It's all free.
Mhm.
Yes, I mean, I do uh, Zoom presentations,
I was just going to talk about
money.
the Zoom. I wanted to talk about that and just, let people know what that's about, if you don't
Oh,
mind.
well, I mean, we started it this month. You can come sign up, just reach out to me. I'll give you the link for it. And you just leave your email address and what you're interested in. But the first
It is in
presentation,
the description of the video for anybody who's watching. I
okay.
have it in the description, the form, and it's also, on our social media pages for this video as well. So,
Okay.
or as Chris said, reach out to him if for some
Yeah,
reason you
it's
know
a
there's
deep
more.
dive introduction presentation. We do a lot of stories, but we also talk about the mechanics behind it all. And I can see this branching off to being, maybe one presentation of all stories. And another one is much more into the mechanics and the theory behind all of this. I think there's utility in both. I believe wholeheartedly in overcoming ignorance is a way to let go of the fear. When we understand what we're dealing with, we're no longer afraid. That's something my grandfather gave me. He put me into the most terrifying case imaginable when I was 16. I had been terrified of everything up until that night. And the next night, I went home and went to bed without the light on. It faced all my fears and eliminated them.
I love that. That's amazing.
Sometimes that's the way that we need to do it. We just have to, jump in full full force, right? So
Baptism by fire.
yeah, exactly. Chris, thank you so much for being here with us. We can't even tell you how much we appreciate it. It is, and as you know, on a personal level, I always love when I get a chance to spend time with you. So thank you for that. And everybody that's watching, please, please, please make sure that you've subscribed. Please share the show. Um, we appreciate you guys being here, and we thank you for all of your comments. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of the questions, but thank you so much for just being a part of this energy today. We truly appreciate it, and take care, everyone, and have a wonderful week. We'll see you next week.